What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the single game showdown slate. Thursday Night Football, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, DraftKings and FanDuel lineup advice, everything you need for tonight's slate. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. The agenda for these Thursday and Monday shows, we run through the injuries, how they impact the slate, who's out, who's returning. That's especially important tonight. We talk about low-risk contests, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads, how to approach those contests, how to build your lineups for those types of payouts. And then we transition to high-risk contests, GPPs, satellites, leagues, any exponential payouts, and talk about some high-risk strategies to help us win those biggest prizes on DraftKings and FanDuel. So let's jump into tonight's game. And if you were awake up and early this morning, especially on the East Coast, and you were reading Twitter, you may have seen the back and forth with Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, erroneously reported that David Montgomery and Taylor Decker were going to be out for the Lions. Lions fans and beat reporters pushed back tremendously. He realized he made a mistake. Those two are, in fact, playing. So if we start on the Lions side, Taylor Decker, who's not going to be in the player pool, obviously, he is an offensive tackle, but is a major return for this Lions offensive line. Because if Decker wasn't going to play tonight, they would be down not only their starting left tackle in Decker, their backup left tackle, and their third string left tackle. Both these guys were injured last week. Fortunately, Decker is expected to return tonight, solidify that offensive line a bit. They still are missing their right guard, but overall, it is a much better situation with one of the top left tackles in the league in the game tonight for Detroit. Really stabilizes that offense, especially against this pass rush for Green Bay. David Montgomery missed last week with the thigh injury. He is expected to return tonight. If we look at David Montgomery, 16 carries in week 1, 21 in week 2. Really get a lot of the early down work, the red zone work. We saw last week, we thought maybe that Jahmyr Gibbs with David Montgomery out would get a little bit more early down work, but just would see an uptick in the passing game. And they kind of flipped Jahmyr Gibbs' role. It was weird last week where he got most of the early down work and Craig Reynolds was playing a lot of third downs and some of the 2-minute stuff. Don't know what that was about, but with Montgomery back, we expect this to look like the first 2 weeks in Detroit looked maybe a little bit more action for Gibbs in the passing game. But either way, Montgomery a little bit underpriced on DraftKings at $6,800 if he is going to be the starting running back. FanDuel, kind of similar, $12,500, not as lowly priced as he is on DraftKings, but probably a little underpriced nonetheless. So that's it for Detroit. And on Green Bay's side, they're getting two of their studs back. Aaron Jones, who left late in week 1 with that hamstring injury, he is expected to return tonight after missing a couple of games. And then Christian Watson, who injured his hamstring very late in the preseason, right at the end of camp, just in time for the regular season. He hasn't played the first 3 games. He is expected to return tonight for Green Bay. Green Bay is also missing 2 offensive linemen. Hurt them a little last week early in the game, and probably going to be without Jair Alexander, their top cornerback, missed last week. Very questionable tonight. And I think it's important to know this. We've known just by doing this for the last few years, Green Bay's training staff and their medical staff is notoriously conservative. So they will hold out guys if there's a question whatsoever. So guys like Jair Alexander, guys like the offensive lineman for Green Bay, they're going to be held out if it's close. The fact that they're clearing Aaron Jones and Christian Watson to play on a short week with 10 days to rest after this game lets us know that they're probably good to go and should see their normal roles. Now, Pelissero, despite his reports earlier, he was saying that he's normally pretty accurate. Pelissero, those guys, those national reporters, pretty accurate what they're saying. He says potentially expect a snap count for Christian Watson. Maybe that's the case. But we know by doing this, if Green Bay is letting him play after missing 3 games and on a short week here, they're probably pretty sure he's good to go for his normal role. Maybe he's not as conditioned as he needs to be, but maybe he plays a little bit less snaps that way. But I would expect a pretty normal role for Christian Watson, especially when they've been playing guys like Dontavian Wicks and Malik Heath in his place instead. Big upgrade with Watson back in the lineup. Now, with these guys playing, we have a very interesting salary situation on DraftKings. Now, FanDuel is not nearly as pronounced. Most guys are appropriately priced here. But what DraftKings did, with the anticipation that Jones may miss, with Christian Watson may miss, with David Montgomery may miss this game, they priced everyone up to their roles as if those guys were out. So we see Jahmyr Gibbs at $9,600. Remember back in week 1, he was not $9,600 in that first showdown slate. Romeo Doubs has been the #1 wide receiver in Christian Watson's absence. He's 8,800 on DraftKings. A.J. Dillon, 7K, is now the running back too. Musgrave, Josh Reynolds, all these guys are priced up as if those guys were missing and out of the lineup. But they're not. And what they did with Jones and Watson, they just slotted them into their normal salary tiers, especially Jones, 10,800. Maybe Watson a little underpriced based on how he finished last year. Montgomery's the only guy that they put in a little bit cheaper than he probably should have been. And as a fact, we think Montgomery is going to be one of the highest owned players on DraftKings tonight. So what this does, basically everyone here is overpriced. If Aaron Jones is limited whatsoever, if Watson is limited whatsoever, either way they're playing, and it takes away from Gibbs, it takes away from Dobbs, it takes away from Dillon, it takes away from even some of the secondary guys like Laporta and Musgrave and Reynolds. So we have this phenomenon where basically every player is overpriced except for David Montgomery. And as a result, if, let's say, David Montgomery was going to be out, we would have at least secondary options in Craig Reynolds, who played last week, Zonovan Knight, who played last week. If Aaron Jones was out, we'd have Patrick Taylor, Emmanuel Wilson. These guys really aren't options anymore as running back threes now, running back fours even. So we basically have no players under 3,500 on DraftKings that are going to play a ton of snaps and or get more than 1 or 2 targets. So it's going to be really interesting to see how ownership shakes out. And as we get to the high risk section, I'll talk about how I think the field might handle this. But overall, it makes it a really tough slate, and especially in low risk contests. So we talk about those 50-50s, double ups, head-to-heads, where you just have to beat half the field to double your money. If you're a member of OccupyFantasy.com, if you're watching these videos, 95% of you are not playing these high volume cash games. Every slate you're getting there, you're jamming as many entries as you can, trying to get as much action as possible. For most of you, if you've read our ultimate guide, you're trying to pick your spots for low risk nights. You're not playing low risk every single slate, but if the slate works out really well, the pricing works out really well, and you can build a safe low risk lineup, and you can find opponents in the lobby that are without badges, you can find really soft contests, then typically, if you're a good DFS player that follows our advice, you're trying to play those contests that night. I don't think that's the case tonight because there's so much uncertainty. Players are overpriced. You can't really build a safe, low-risk lineup to where you'll have a massive edge over a casual player who's just entering a random lineup into the contest. And that's not what we're looking for in low-risk environments. Because if we play, let's say, both quarterbacks, right? Goff and Love. We play Montgomery because he is underpriced. We play Aaron Jones, I guess, as the lead back. $3,500 per player. We can't do that because the cheapest viable option we have are the Packers defense at $3,600. So not really that possible. Let's say we captain a kicker. Let's try Carlson here, if I can find him. Carlson or Patterson. Let's go Patterson here. $8,500 per player. Jones, Goff, Love, Montgomery. $5K per player. We could fit someone else in here, maybe the other kicker, but we're still leaving out one of the best players in the game in Jerry Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? This is a Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson type slate where, yes, you're not locking up all the scoring by playing a stud receiver, but you're playing a guy that's pretty much guaranteed for 15-plus points, which is the best you can ask for in low-risk contests, and you're not playing that guy. You're also not playing Gibbs. You're not playing it's really tough. You're going to have to leave out 1 to 2 guys, and a couple are going to be overpriced. So I would avoid low-risk contests. If we go over to the FanDuel, it's a pretty similar concept where if you try to play both quarterbacks, you play Montgomery because he's underpriced. You have to leave out St. Brown unless you play him over a quarterback. Not really the move on FanDuel. $8K per player. One value that you must know about on FanDuel tonight, and he'll be extremely popular, is Anders Carlson, the kicker for Green Bay. For some reason, it's priced at just $8K. He'll be extremely popular. $8K. So this could work, right? But you're still leaving out the Green Bay running back, and you're still leaving out Amon-Ra St. Brown. So this is probably the best low-risk lineup for FanDuel. But it's not good and it leaves us with more risk than we desire in low risk contests. So all in all, to summarize, a very tough low risk night on both sides. But instead, let's talk about high risk contests, leagues, satellites, GPPs. These are where the money is made. These are the biggest payouts on both sites. You have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. And actually, I'm going to show you something really quickly. This was the Sunday night game. This was Pittsburgh and Las Vegas Sunday Night Football. This lineup I built, this won a Mega Millionaire ticket for here in a couple of weeks, a $4,400 ticket, $4,500 ticket if you round up. But kind of a similar phenomenon where we had a popular kicker. Both kickers were popular. There weren't many values in this game. I still played a stud captain, so Amon-Ra St. Brown or someone similar in this game tonight. And I played an overpriced stud in Najee Harris, who no one wanted to play. Jalen Warren reported to get more work. Harris was technically overpriced for his role, which we have a lot of guys of tonight, and was only 15% owned. Defense, Steelers were priced up a little bit, only 11% in this contest. But I feel like we could see similar types of lineups tonight when smaller contests and even the largest contest where we have a 1 to 2 special teams, kickers plus defense, and a low-owned stud, Romeo Doubs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. These types of guys who are technically overpriced but lower owns, this is how these types of lineups can win tonight. It feels very similar to me in regard to Sunday night as it is tonight. So just keep that in mind as you are building. Now, let's give a couple angles here, and let's talk about high-risk lineups, some strategies I'm thinking about. But I do want to just touch on ownership really quickly because with the lack of value and the way the pricing is, there are a couple ways the field is going to handle this, and we truly don't know what's going to happen. I think there are 3 things that could happen, and we wouldn't be shocked by either one. I'm just not sure which one's going to happen. We could see one, just outrageous ownership on the kickers and defenses. So Lions, Packers, Carlson, Patterson. Like they could all get 20% plus, 30% plus. Would not shock us as no one wants to play anyone below 3,500. We could see a crazy increase in cheaper to mid-range captains. So guys like Musgrave, Montgomery we will see for sure. Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Jaden Reed, like these 5K to 7K guys could be higher owned than they normally would be in the captain spot on DraftKings as people try to fit in some of those higher priced guys with no one else to play down here. That's a very real possibility, and seems pretty bad, but it is something the field may do. Or the field just starts jamming these cheaper guys. Samori Toure, who else down here? I mean, it's gross down here. DeGuara, the number 2 tight end. Brock Wright, number 2 tight end. Like, it's possible these guys get ownership more than they should. I think it's probably the least likely option, but don't be shocked if you see one of these guys down here end up like 15, 20% in your small field GPPs, and you're like, what the hell's going on? It's very possible. But I do think the field ends up just playing kickers and defenses more and jamming those mid-range captains even more, which gives us some clear edges if we decide to not go those routes. All right, what else can we do here? Let me pull up my notes here so I'll give you guys the best advice. So I think tonight is a great night to lower your allocation a little bit, but when you do play, take stands, right? If you're on the side of us and you believe that the Green Bay medical staff is to be trusted, that they wouldn't play these guys like they normally haven't in the past if they're not fully ready to go, Aaron Jones is going to see lower ownership than he would on a normal slate where he doesn't have this questionable tag on DraftKings. Same goes for Christian Watson. This is the same for DraftKings and FanDuel. Watson is 11,500, the Q tag. Aaron Jones, 13,500, the Q tag, sandwiched in between Montgomery and St. Brown. These guys are going to get lower ownership. So the first angle is to just trust the coaching staff, the medical staff, and play those guys heavily. Aaron Jones gets his full role. Christian Watson returns to one of the best deep threats in the league, one of the best rookie wide receivers last year. And in a matchup they can exploit deep balls against Detroit, Watson explodes, right? I would go heavy on that angle. Play Aaron Jones a ton, go way overweight or way overweight on Christian Watson. That's one angle to play. Try to maximize when you're right, when the field is a little tentative in playing these guys. Now, just because the field is tentative in playing those guys, it doesn't mean that they're going to be more aggressive in their secondary or beneficiaries from those guys. So just because Watson is limited doesn't mean the field is going to flock to Dobbs. He's still overpriced if Watson is in. Same goes for A.J. Dillon, 7K. On a slate where Aaron Jones had not been injured, Dillon would be like 5,400 or something, as we saw last year in most slates, on Green Bay Showdown slates. So the other angle, let's just say you think they hold them back a little bit, or they're completely limited, or they re-aggravate their injury. That's also a possibility. You go heavy on Dobbs, who no one wants to play, and you go heavy on Dillon, who no one wants to play. I think I prefer the first option, but I wouldn't fault anyone for playing Dobbs, who we expect to be less than 15% owned, Dillon less than 20% owned, maybe less than 15% owned as well overall. Wouldn't fault anyone for going heavy on those guys as well. As you see, even if in smaller contests, if we go back to my contest here, Najee Harris only scored 6.5 points. Can Dillon or Dobbs score 6.5 points? Yes, obviously they can, even as the number 2 options on their squads. And you can still win small field GPPs, winner take alls. So there's not a ton of downside to it, even though it looks pretty gross and feels pretty gross. Other option, you could build for a sloppy game. Green Bay missing offensive lineman. If Taylor Decker re-aggravates his injury and can't play, they're down to their 4th string offensive tackle. That's really bad news for Detroit. playing defenses heavy, I think, is a really good idea tonight. Yes, they might end up higher than we normally would see defenses, but if you play them super heavy and play for a lower scoring type of game, you can be very profitable tonight if it plays out that way. And on that same note, because this is a close spread, basically a pick 'em. I think Detroit's a 1-point favorite. The field is going to build pretty balanced. Maybe slightly more Detroit heavy lineups, so maybe more 4-2 Lions lineups than 4-2 Packers lineups. Maybe more 3-2 Lions lineups on FanDuel than 3-2 Packers lineups. If scoring is concentrated, if there's a blowout and you play onslaughts, you play 5 Lions in a lineup on DraftKings, 4 on FanDuel, 5 Packers in a lineup, 4 on FanDuel. No one's really going to do that on this slate, and it's possible. If it shakes out a certain way, especially if guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown dominates the opportunities, if Aaron Jones dominates the opportunities, if one team gets completely blanked and the kicker or running back is the only one scoring, I think onslaughts are a really good way to get unique in the larger contest tonight. So a lot of different ways to play. It's a super interesting slate. There's one more guy I will call out here who I really like tonight, and I'm hoping he doesn't get the mid-range captain bump as I suggested as a possibility. It's Khalif Raymond, who technically, once again, is overpriced for his production. Let's look here. Game log, 9.5, 13.7, and 3 points. 6 targets, 3 targets, 1 target. So if you're looking at season long through 3 weeks, averaging just over 3 targets per game. It's not great. However, there was a pretty big shift last week where he outsnapped Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones has looked completely over the hill through 3 weeks so far this season. Raymond is electric, dynamic, returns punts obviously, but they were targeting him downfield last week. Finally got their better wide receiver in the lineup more often. And if he continues to grow that gap between he and Marvin Jones, maybe he's a little underpriced at 5,200. And maybe he even outscores Josh Reynolds, who is priced at, 6,200, I believe? Yeah, 6,200. So Raymond's a guy I like playing in this middle that he could go over 20%, but he also, there's a chance he gets squeezed out as well. Where is he? Khalif Raymond. Khalif Raymond's a guy I like getting overweight on tonight and just pray that the field doesn't land on him more than they should based on how the pricing shakes out. So that'll do it for this video. Listen, we do these videos every Monday and Thursday for showdown slates and 2-game slates, so make sure you are subscribed here on YouTube. Our subscribed versus not subscribed ratios on who watches our videos, it actually did rise a little bit since Monday, so we appreciate that. If you're not subscribed, the best way to get notified when we go live, upload these videos, is just clicking that button right here below the video. It's free to do, helps us out, obviously, but also helps you out as well. Give us a thumbs up. That lets us know that you like this content, that you want to keep seeing these videos every single Monday and Thursday. And our daily plug, which will go into much greater detail than I went to in this video with rankings, lineup strategies, slate notes, construction tips for different contest types for both sites. That'll be ready this afternoon. The link is in the description below as well. Our writer Bismo does a great job on that for the Monday and Thursday showdown slates, so make sure you go read that. And I think that's it. Anything else? If you have any questions, comment below the video. I'll be monitoring the channel throughout the day and through the evening. We'll get back to you. Any opinions you have, drop it below. I know you guys like talking to each other, giving opinions, making predictions. So drop your predictions in the comments below. And any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. So Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening and good luck in tonight's Lions and Packers showdown slate.